All right, guys. Thanks for joining in with us here on this week's podcast, episode number 82. For you guys that don't know, some of you do, some of you don't, but we want to thank you guys for joining us here. This podcast is going to be Turkey Camp Part 2. What a great time that we had. Thankful for the friends and the family that were able to make it happen for us. And first of all, I do want to take 1 second. The most important thing of all, I want everyone to keep the Geyer family in your thoughts and prayers. There was a passing here of Papa Dave, who is a big influence of the working class bow hunter. So if you guys haven't already, man, say a prayer for them and, send out a message to the working class bow hunter and or the Geyer family. They need your thoughts and prayers. So goes out to Papa Dave. So before we do this, I definitely want to do the drive checklist here and just kind of thank everybody who makes all these things and all the people that we partner with here on the Outdoor Drive. A huge thanks. Nor'easter Game Calls, Gator Outdoors, Wicked Twisted Bowstrings, Timber Tumblers, and Broadside Camo. I want to thank those guys for partnering with us and making everything possible here at the Outdoor Drive podcast. And also, don't forget to get in on the giveaway. The most important part is you have to buy something from our sponsors, use our promo code, and or if they don't have a promo code for them, use Outdoor Drive giveaway in the notes to get yourself into those. Details are on our website, and also they are on all of our social media platforms. So without further ado, guys, let's get this thing underway. Let's turn this key and let's start the drive. Nice shot. Here comes a shooter. Shooter. Big buck. Stack. All right, welcome back to the Outdoor Drive podcast. This is your boy East Coast Trev, and
this is Steve.
Is it just Steve or just
Steve?
Oh,
Steve.
Okay. Who else? We got somebody else in the studio. Still?
Yeah, part two. He hasn't left.
Part two.
Not yet.
It's just Andrew.
Just Andrew. Is that like a Virginia thing? Is it like the water in Virginia that makes you just Andrew or just Steven?
No, he's from Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Well, no, he's been drinking the water for a week in Turkey.
Not a lot of it.
Not a lot of it.
Well, we'll call it
coming out of bottles.
Distilled, right? Well, why don't you guys tell us a little bit of how the rest of the camp has been going ever since I left? We might as well just dive right into it, I guess, right?
Well, we got to cover the first few days you were here. We didn't get into that.
Oh, that's right, huh? I forgot.
Yeah,
we are on
you were
part
here
2.
And gone.
Oh man, that's right. I forgot about that. All right. No, I was just kidding.
We talked about the front yard and that's it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. So we might as well. Well, I mean, we could get to the exciting part.
Yeah, let's just roll right into to opening morning.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. Who wants to kick it off?
I'll let you. You did the work.
How come me, man?
We were just tucked in the trees out of the way.
You had more action than all of us.
I did? What happened?
On opening morning?
Oh, okay. Now I remember. Kind of brought it back. I was a little out of it there. All right. So the first morning that we ended up going in, we trekked up onto the mountain, which kind of sucks. It's not a fun walk. Did anybody else enjoy it?
Whooped our ass
last
year. We got some good miles in on it. It's definitely a good place to get in shape.
I think we were averaging like 5 miles a day when we were over there. I think was what my iPhone told me, was that we're about 5 miles, I think, averaging over there. But it's to like kind of like break it to everybody. It is the Blue Ridge Mountains, which is, well, actually Andrew's going to call it a hill. So I guess that doesn't
a big hill.
It is a pretty big hill. It's definitely got a little bit of everything. It's got a little bit of ag. It's got a little bit of woods. I don't like going up the mountain. I know you guys got to go up the mountain later on in the day or the week.
Mhm.
So we worked our way over there. We ended up striking. No, we actually remember we scared the two
Yeah.
out of the tree to begin with, which made things really tough. And we were like, I don't know if it was a helper or a hinder to the whole thing as far as that goes. Like, were those the hens that went down, or were they Jake's, or what were they? Because I think
They were hens. We
were definitely
discovered that
hens.
further on. We
Oh,
ended up
really?
walking under, and we have them on film busting us and cackling at us, and then we actually caused them to fly down because the birds were gobbling and we couldn't move. So we got them jump, and it was a perfect fly down cackle. They didn't alarm putt, nothing. They just blew out of the tree and actually ended up drawing a bird to us, but we'll get to that.
Oh, really? That's crazy. All right. So that kind of like brings back kind of my theory of kind of why the birds work the way that they did, right? I mean, that kind of puts a lot into perspective now hearing that. So we ended up going up and over the ridge, and we hit, what do we hit? I think we hit a crow call, right?
No, I owl hooted.
Oh, you owl hooted as we had gotten over the hill.
Mhm.
And they had lit off right to our left hand side as we're going down the trail. We have the field to our right, and this was an area we ended up going and setting up in an area where we had set up last year, but the birds were the opposite direction, and we
Right.
tried working them down to us from the east to the west instead of the west to the east. And so we had sat in this kind of like corridor where there's one trail running left to right and then one straight up and down, and there's like a V in the middle. It's very important that you know this. There's a V in the middle of land, like sticks, twigs, and so on and so forth. So the birds start gobbling, and I start tree yelping, whatever. He responds. Another one responds. So we just kept giving it to him. Gobble, gobble, gobble. So they were definitely interested in what we had going on. Steven had put up the decoys. These guys were to my right-hand side in some like cedar thicket. I was to the left side of the path. They were to the right side of the path. And the birds started hammering. Well, they started to come. Well, not even that. Before that even
Before the
ended,
birds even came out of the tree, it was wild.
there was so many things like that happened very quickly. So the first thing that happens, like it just starting to get light. Your eyes are just starting to like kind of like get its balance in. And I look up and all I see is something swoops down, dude, and smacks the decoy.
Knocks
like,
the hen decoy clear off the stick.
It broke the stick.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the heck? I'm thinking that it's a hen, right? Like, but why would a hen dive down? And like,
that's what I told Andrew. I leaned over. I was like, I've never seen a hen dive bomb another hen out of the roost. I was like, that's kind of weird.
Or not on purpose, anyways. Like, if it did, then it would have like hit it. You know what I'm saying? And then like keep going or like make noise or something. So I'm like waiting for like some type of noise out of if it was a hen. And then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, that is definitely a hawk. A hawk just attacked the decoy.
Yeah, that thing was flying too fast to be a hen.
Right?
I don't know. On that property, there's no telling.
That thing's hammered.
Those are super turkeys there, dude.
It like kicked the thing back like 20 yards. And I'm like, what the heck? So I run out there and I'm like, it was a hawk. So we end up putting the thing back up on the stake, and the birds are still hammering up on the hill. So we call to them. They're still hammering. Now mind you, they're still on roost at this point. And then I look out and I see even more motion. I'm like, what in the world is that? So now there's 3 deer, and I'm like, now they're playing with the decoys. I'm like, oh, all right. But I don't want to call. This is what's going through my head. I'm like, I don't want to call, because if I call, then it's going to spook the deer, which they're going to run.
They blow. They do that. It spooks the birds. They shut up or they don't come down.
Right. So that's kind of like what's going through my mind. So yeah. So I wait for him to get out of range where they can't really see me. I end up calling. The birds start coming down. Did the second thing attack the decoy by then? Or was it?
No, that was after.
That was after we had shot, right?
Yep.
So the gobblers come down, and I see them. They're coming from the right to our left, and then they're going to come down the left leg of the path. and they're going to start coming towards us. So I see him, and he starts going in strut, out of strut, into strut, out of strut. He comes down, he works his way in. Now he's like 15 yards, 10 yards behind the decoys. And I'm like, he's like standing right there, and he sees the decoy. And now he starts getting a little weird, and he starts to put his head down, and he comes out of strut, and then he puts his head up, and I'm thinking to myself, Andrew, shoot.
So we're sitting 90 degrees from where these birds are walking in. They're walking in facing Trev. We're 90 degrees in line with the decoy, and these birds hadn't quite cleared the brush yet for us. So
right.
we could see bits and pieces, but we couldn't see everything. We could just hear the bird until he popped his head up, and then it was time to go.
And I wasn't, and I didn't realize that Andrew didn't have a shot. I'm thinking, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm thinking that on this angle that, you know, he's now cleared this, but now looking and reviewing the footage, he didn't really have a safe, ethical shot. So I'm waiting for him to do it. And he just like sits there, and I'm like, it's now or never. What else are we going to do? Like, we're going to,
and 45 yards year, my instructions were, if you have a shot, take the shot. Who cares about the camera? Who cares about anything else?
But I mean, I want to, you know, Andrew's never shot a bird, this, that, and the other thing. We want to make sure that he has the first ample opportunity. So I wait for him. He putts and he turns and he stops. And I'm like, all right, now's the time. But he didn't end up shooting. He didn't have the shot. So he starts to turn around, and he starts to like kind of like move a little fast. So I'm like, now or never. So I put it up and I shoot. Well, I end up missing, and he goes up and he comes down. I thought I maybe hit him, but I definitely didn't. I clean missed him. And so we start calling again, and there's other birds gobbling, or was it, maybe it could have been them or whatever.
There was another group of birds up on the hillside. And we were hoping to get them to break.
Which I've had this happen before with shooting and still having birds come down. And so they start to go away, and I'm calling. And I'm like not really paying attention, kind of like playing on my phone. And because like obviously those birds aren't coming, and I hear like what would sound like, which would be like wings smacking on a decoy. And I look up real fast, and there's a coyote. He just whacked the decoy, and he turns around and runs away. And I'm like, whoa, that was wicked cool. What the heck just happened?
Yeah, we're sitting there, and I look at Andrew and goes, there's something moving off to our right. I can hear it. It's walking through the leaves. And I turn and I look back. I think I was looking back I was looking back to the right to try to figure out what it was.
Right.
And I hear that. And I turn and I just see the decoy spinning. And Andrew goes, coyote. And I turn and look, and that sucker was hightailing it up the friggin' hillside behind us. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
Right. What's going through your mind at this? Because like this is like your first like actual turkey hunt in the woods, like craziness.
Yeah, this morning, that first morning was just obnoxious. That first hour specifically. I mean, like you said, we no more than sat down. We didn't even have time to get the cameras turned on, and you know, this night hawk comes swooping down out of the darkness and throws a decoy across the path, and I'm like, oh wow, okay. And then we've got these two birds that are coming in, and you know, just sitting there waiting on this thing to take two more steps, because I had this big old bush, you know, staring down the scope, looking right at this bush. You know, I could see the head bobbing, you know, in between limbs. I'm like, man. And, you know, then to recover from that and turn around, and this coyote, it was just a wild, like, start to the whole deal. And it was exciting. It was exhilarating. It was a lot of fun. So it was a fun way to get the week started for sure.
So like going into the whole like turkey hunting thing, obviously like you haven't done this before. We urban hunted with Peter, which very thankful for him allowing us to do such a thing.
Definitely.
And then going into, you know, going up to the mountain and hunting. But like, what is going through your mind before all of this? Like going into your first thing, going into your first day, and we hadn't heard a gobble when we had hunted with Peter. So to go there, then Steven lights one off and he's gobbling and then coming in. Like what's kind of like going through your head as a new turkey hunter?
I'm just watching. just watching what you were doing, watching what Steve's doing, just trying to soak it all in, because this is an experience for one. So it's something that I want to remember. So I'm trying to do that. And then obviously every little bit that I can pick up and learn, for the future, because I don't live near you guys. It's not like something we can do on a regular basis. So I got to be able to take these tools back and use them for myself. So it was just absorb it all, take it all in, enjoy all of it, and do whatever I could to not cause a problem. That's my two big things is don't screw anything up, and soak it all in. Because
it's good that you were cognizant about that, because more than once we'll take people out, and it's really hard when something goes wrong, goes haywire. They cause the bird to spook, and you just can't bring yourself to tell them that it busted, because it busted you
because that reason.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to just kind of, hey man, it's all right. I'm not sure if you kind of glare off the camera or didn't like the decoys, but he didn't like something. So I'm glad you were cognizant of that, and you did very well.
Well, you're going to have those experiences. We've all had them, walking through the woods with different folks, some that are used to it, and they're supposed to be competent, and you're like, oh wow. And then you've got the new folks, and well, kind of like what we talked about last week. I just wanted to act as if I knew nothing, and just be the best follower, I guess, that I could be, because I wanted to be able to learn this process, right, and pick up some things to be able to take and use. So I felt like the best thing I could do was just be the best woodsman I could, and not screw anything up, that control the things that I could control, and just soak it in. Because how often do we get to do something like this?
Right.
This is not something,
not often enough,
that we're going to get to do all the time, so learn everything you can.
What do you mean? We're going to Oklahoma next year for turkey camp.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we'll hit Oklahoma and Kansas.
Now we're talking Rios and Merriam's.
Twisting my arm.
We'll get them all done. I was looking through old videos. I found like a video of turkeys that there's like 30 turkeys in the field in Kansas,
just sitting in front of him.
I had a bearded hen on camera at like 15 yards and didn't realize it was a bearded hen. Jesus. I could have shot her like 16 times.
That's my number one book.
We can make it happen.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is that, and I'll take it back a little bit to what you were saying. Like, we all try to be that way. Like, just pay attention to our surroundings, where, I don't want to be the guy that moves, that busts the birds or overcalls or whatever the case may be. And it's kind of tough. And a lot of people, like, I've hunted with everything from youth to experienced hunters in the turkey woods. And it's like, you kind of like walk on pins and needles, right? Because you don't want to be that guy that moves, that makes the wrong decision. And it's tough. Like, group hunting is a very tough thing. Like, in some, like, especially with a group of guys that have bold personalities, right? Or may have the experience to be able to definitely kill a bird, but they'll like I find myself sometimes like I'm a little bold. So I try to make the decision or know what's right or whatever the case may be. And it's got to be tough. You know what I'm saying? So you just kind of sometimes you just got to sit back, take it all in, and just go with the flow, and sometimes that's not easy. And it's not an easy thing, especially, having hunting experience, right? We all have hunting experience. So we all think that one thing's better over another, and it just makes things tough.
Well, and, there towards the end of your time here, you started asking me what my gut thought, and what I keep saying,
I don't know.
I'm up for whatever, right?
Yeah, right.
Because, and my thought process is, I'm more interested in trying to understand your decision-making process than going off mine, because mine is completely naive, you know what I mean, to this particular type of hunting. I don't know what I'm talking about. It would be foolish for me to jump in. So it's going to be better long term to watch you guys make decisions and then, go back and try to figure out why you made those decisions. And it forces me to learn a little bit more than if I'm not actively interacting with that process in my head that way.
And and on the same token, like especially Virginia for one, your opinion might be the best opinion because we have no idea what those birds do, how they work. Like it could be totally against everything that we know, right? I mean, so it could be a good thing, right?
Well, we did learn quite a bit about those birds in the last 2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
I can literally say we tried every tactic to kill a bird you can possibly try on that property, literally.
That's awesome.
And we really narrowed down quite a few things that, when I go back in there,
Mm-hmm.
clucks. That's it. Clucks and purrs.
Little.
Do not yelp.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that we realized that Jake decoys in the timber are a bad idea.
Oh yeah. Well, that was the day after Trev left.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So day 2 while Trev was here, we had action. We had birds. Trying to remember exactly what all went down that day.
So the day
That
after
was in Berryville. That was with Pete.
the second day?
Yeah.
Yeah, the second day
Yeah,
was
Sunday.
at Pete's.
Oh, that was a good
That
day.
was a exciting day
That was.
in a wildly different way.
That was definitely one of those crazy like we went back with Pete again and we can't thank Pete enough for taking us out and hunting with us because if it wasn't for him we wouldn't have been really able to hunt on Sunday. So we didn't have to sit out a day. We didn't lose a day on the trip. And being able to go in there and it was cool. That was a cool day. And going back to the field, trying to strike him where he thought he would, and then they were down on another farm across the street. So we decided to go down and try and get those birds to come across the road. And I'll tell you, they were hot to trot. I mean, they really were. I mean, they lit up and I knew that they would come across the road, but were they going to do the right thing? And that's not really what happened. I mean, they came across the road, but they didn't play or read the script the way that they should have.
That was a fun one because it ended up being close to 4 hours before we actually got eyes on those birds. I mean, we're fairly confident that the birds across the street are the birds we ended up seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they, like you said, they were hot from sunup, and it was just a matter of waiting on them and keeping in contact. But that was cool as they, I guess like 8:30, they finally crossed that road, and you guys had moved to the far side of the field, so farther away from the birds. Steven and I were on the front field, which was closest to where they crossed the road. But at that point, they must have been on hens or something because they were paralleling our field. They weren't showing any interest in coming towards us.
They were responsive as all.
They were responsive,
that's about
but they
it.
weren't moving. We could hear them move parallel to us, and so we ended up taking that quick break, and we all kind of moved to that back field. And I guess they got to take care of their business and decided to look for something else. And it was at that point. So that was a fun thing to experience because we had this constant interaction with the same birds for a long period of time. And I don't know, my opinion after the whole thing was these were some brilliant old birds that have probably been around the block a time or two, because once we finally got them in our area, they were very particular. I mean, we sat there for 20 minutes with these birds at 60 yards behind a cedar tree, staring.
Would not break the field edge.
No.
They just weren't coming.
Came in on a string and
they
hit
were
that field edge, and that was it.
Big, beautiful birds, and the glimpses that we got to see. I mean, these were.
It was crazy because, so they, like Andrew was saying, they're paralleling the property, where we're at in the field that we're in. And so we decided to, instead of taking the stance of running and gunning and trying to move around and really fire on those birds, to just set still where we knew that those birds had kind of like cut them off. But the thing is that we were on a small, narrow type property, so we really couldn't get in front of them. And I was kind of nervous because there was a fence row dividing the two properties. And if we could get them to come through there, in my mind, I'm thinking if they come through, we can seal the deal, right? So they end up striking about 200 yards away, and they came in firing. They were fire hot. When they came to the edge of the field in the cedar thicket and they seen the decoys, they literally locked up. I mean, locked up. Like there was nothing you could do. Like if it was aggressive calling, soft calling, purring, clucking, yelping, I mean, we pretty much did everything that there's known to man. And as soon as they saw those decoys,
I had my camera trained on that thing's head behind that tree for 10 minutes straight. And he would look up at the decoy and you would call and he would fan. And then you go back down. I was like, what else you got? That's literally all that took place that entire time.
It was nuts. And then we used this strategy of letting them go out and then move in on them, trying to cut them off again. So me and Andrew end up breaking off from them, from Peter and Steven, and we try and get around them. We end up lighting them off, and they start coming back in. And I'm like, all right, they're going to come in. And then I look at Andrew and go, no, they're not. I said, there's a fence row here. So now we have to play the game. But he's like, well, what happens? I'm like, I'm promising you, the worst nightmare in the turkey woods, if I can teach anybody anything, is stay away from fences. I mean, Steven can protest to this, that literally you watch them come in and they just bump their chest against the fence. And then you're like, oh man, that's a heartbreak.
Stupid ass bird.
Yeah. And it's the same with water, right? So like a stream, a creek, a swamp, forget it. They're not going to come across it. You put a reservoir, a giant river like the Shenandoah or something, they'll figure out how to fly
right
across.
If they look at it and go, well, my only way is across is to fly, they'll cross it. But if they're going, do I walk through it or do I jump? Do I walk through it or jump? They'll stand there and think about that decision for half an hour.
And just go back and forth.
Yeah.
Back and forth. And they'll just lock up. And it's the same with the fence. They could duck their little butts underneath the thing and come under, and they're fine. But they have one thing on their mind, and that's it. And they literally will not cross it. And it's just so nerve-wracking. So then we decided to make a jump, because now we're on the corner of the fence, but the other side of the fence to our right would still be our property, but in front of us isn't. So now what we do is we then go backwards, jump over the fence, and go over. Now they're starting to come in front of us, but when they're in front of us, they're not coming to us. And I'm like, come on. And that's when I poured it on thick, and I'm like cutting and yelp. I mean, these
birds wanted to die. That's all I'm saying. Me and Peter sitting back there going, they want to die. We're waiting for the boom. I've got the camera on. It's recording just to get the sound. And literally, it's like they're literally on top of each other. It sounds like they're literally touching each other. And we're waiting for the boom. And waiting. And waiting. And this whole time, it's just over and over and over. And I was like, gosh, dang it.
I think they were screwing with us more than we were screwing with them.
You're right.
I think at one point you said those could be, 4-year-old birds, and
they've played the game.
That's a dinosaur in turkey here. So I think they knew something was up after they saw us that first time, and they just honorary old birds that wanted to screw with us. Couldn't put it any other way, but it was exciting. It was certainly exciting.
I think one of the things about the turkey woods, right, is not only being the success part of it, but like the point that something, when they get you, man, when they win that battle, there's something that comes over you as just like, wow, that's incredible, man. They got me, and they got me good. Like it's almost as good as the success part of it, because you're like, I couldn't get him this time.
Yeah. What can I do different next time?
And it only makes you progressively a better hunter, right? So like when you learn those things, like the fence, the calling, when they're at one point, and when when you hit a call and they gobble and then you wait a couple of minutes and then they whack again and then they whack again and they whack again, you haven't even called, and then you hit a call and they cut you off, you know that they're gonna come in. Like, it's gonna happen. Like, they're in that search mode for you. And then there's that times that you hit that call and they only hammer once, and then you have to kind of tone it back, and then you'll hit the call like 2-3 times and then they hammer. And then you're like, all right, are they going to come in silent, or are they just going to play that game where they just kind of hang out and they kind of know what's going on? And so when they hammer like that and they don't come in and then they just kind of get you for the day and it turns 12 o'clock, you're like,
Yeah.
it is what it is. And they won.
So day 2 was a little wild. Day 3 was, it was kind of mellow. We were really hoping to knock Trev's last day off with a good smackdown on bird. And same thing, they were roosted in the same damn tree. And we moved in, and remember, they fired off as we were coming right into the V we were in opening on Saturday.
That was the rain day.
And our original plan is we were going to take this left fork in the trail and go a little deeper and go after another bird on the far field. And these things hammered off on us as we're walking. You know, we didn't crow call, didn't nothing. They just hammered. They couldn't have been what we thought was 100 yards if we were lucky. Mm-hmm. So we doubled back and kind of made a move around and got down in this ravine below them, because there's no way to move around them. They would have had us busted if we got any closer. And we worked the bird for a little bit. Sounded like they were coming in. And as we're sitting there, Andrew turns and goes, I just saw something walk across, you know, it's like 80 yards or something. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, he saw them. I said, but were we busted or were they coming down? As in my head, we're playing this, and we sit there for another 20, 25 minutes. And then he finally hammered off again, and he was a long ways away. Mm-hmm. So pretty sure he saw us, and that was that. We ran that property for another 5 miles. I think we got 2 or 3 more birds to strike, and then got in that pine grove again that Trev loves so much. And then we struck up a bird, and we ended up setting up in there right where we know it's a strut zone. They're always on this ridge. Always.
For 2 years now.
For 2 years straight. And we set up on that thing, and we call, and he hammers. But he's off the ridge down below us on the side he never has been on traditionally. And we're sitting there, and a hen comes in. Trev didn't even know it.
I had no idea.
There was a hen at 25 yards just feeding, just back and forth, back and forth. Me and Andrew were like watching. He goes, does she have a beard? Does she have a beard? And I'm zoomed in on the camera, and I was like, no. Because he was ready to wax her. Mm-hmm. Like, he was like antsy. Please tell me she's got a beard. No, man, sorry.
And Trev pointed out something that we kind of glossed over. We weren't supposed to have rain that day.
Oh, yeah.
And we had rain that day. And at points, we had a lot of rain that day. We were
it's a very
playing
good point
that game in a considerable amount of rain at points. I mean, we were pretty well soaked by the end of that day.
These birds did everything they shouldn't have done in the rain.
That was my thing. Like, when we go down the hill and that thing hammers off for the first time, I'm like, all right, this isn't good. Like, this is not prototypical to what's going to happen.
Yeah, it was wild. It was 0 dark still. It was just starting to pick up the rain. You know, it was that rain that's like, okay, this is tolerable, but it's on that verge of crap, I need rain gear. And it hammers. We make our move. We're sitting there getting our asses soaked, and they just keep hammering and hammering. And they fly down and they hammer. And they start working in. And then when nothing happens and we do finally hear that bird, it's pouring at this point. We're pretty well soaked. And so we go to make a move again.
And there was 2 in the field.
Yeah. And as we're walking out, there are 2 big strutters in the field, which I got incredible video of them. And my goodness, the paint brushes on these birds, these were, it's what you want to shoot. I'll put it that way.
I couldn't believe it, man. When you sent me the video, I was like, huh?
Yeah.
Huh?
So we see them in there, but at the time we're like, oh, they must be 2-year-olds, you know, they're just kind of hanging out. They weren't responding to calls. They weren't with the hens that we knew of. They're just hanging out. So I was like, oh, must be young 2-year-olds. And we couldn't get them to come in for nothing. So that's when we bounced and went to the pines. Struck up that bird. We ended up chasing him to the next ridge. And then as he left and went to the next ridge, he actually flew over the swamp into the neighboring field.
Mm-hmm.
We got set up again, started calling, and he was trying to get back to us. But as he had flown over, he'd crossed the swamp and the big creek into a neighboring field over a fence.
He's doing this. He's going back and forth.
Back and forth in that field edge, trying to figure out how to come back.
That's the worst dance, man. When you see a turkey doing the dance and he's doing the back and forth dance, you've been beat. You've been absolutely destroyed. Every single. I hate that.
That's why they call it, what is it, a Polish turkey shoot?
Yeah. Thank God in Virginia you can shoot him with a rifle because it makes so much more sense now.
But I may resort to that at the rate I'm going this year.
I don't blame you.
But yeah, that was. After that, we were also soaking wet and miserable and irritated at those daggum birds that we, 11:30, we piled in the car, didn't even bother with the last half hour. And we came back here and soaked everything up and had to wash and dry our clothes and clean up. And Andrew's hands looked like, if you hit them wrong, they'd split from the moisture.
My hands were so wet.
Walking prunes. I mean, it was wild. It was not the way I wanted your last day to be here.
No. And so, Andrew, at this point, what kind of gone through your head? Because now you've had 4 hunts in under the belt, and you've had pretty much everything from complete failure to not happening, gobbling, not gobbling, rain, not rain. I mean, you've been through the whole entire element from 0 to 100 in the turkey woods.
Yeah,
correct.
So we thought.
Correct.
No, my thought process at this point was, this is just starting to get fun. Like, I might be a little crooked in the head, but I told you guys first day, and you told me I regret it, that I didn't want to kill on the first day. Obviously I would, but I wanted some hardship, right? Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't call anything we had for the whole week hardship, but we experienced a whole lot of stuff. And so the fact that, 3 days in, it hasn't happened yet, but we've had all these amazing experiences and close calls and different styles of pursuing these birds. I'm thinking, like, I honestly thought it was great. Like, this is perfect because, one, there's all these different things that I'm getting to learn that, would have, may or may not have happened if we'd have killed out in day 1 or day 2, but I kind of like the idea of having to earn it a little bit. And, the fact that it wasn't that we were making bad mistakes or anything like that. It was just that the birds were beating us. That to me is far more interesting than, if we'd have gone out and, whacked 7, 8, 9 birds between the 3 of us in 7 days. So I was just starting to be like enjoying it, like in that almost
sick twisted way.
In that sick twisted way, where I'm like, yes, this is exactly what I wanted. So if we'd have gone and sat in a blind on the edge of a field for 7 straight days,
he'd have slept.
I probably it'd be the last time I'd have come out here for turkey season. But the fact that we worked for it for 7.5 days, that was.
And you have to remember too, Virginia's rated the worst or hardest turkey hunting state in the country.
It's a perfect place to start.
That's right. And you get to see
it's all downhill from here.
Yeah, exactly.
And we had so many choices. I bite my tongue.
What did I tell you? I told you
we
we could go to my spot in Kansas.
Yeah, we'd be done in 10 minutes.
We could fill our tags in 2 days.
Yeah.
Like, based on what we saw. But I like.
It's fun,
that
but
would
it's
not
the
have
fun.
been that would nearly that would be way better next year. You know what I mean? It's way better to come out and fight for it.
And you learn everything, right? So
And
you've
here's
been
the deal though, like that if I was 10, probably not the place to go on your first hunt. But for someone that's looking at a new kind of hunting that's got, a background in, different things, that enjoys the pursuit of it as much as the actual, animal itself, man, I couldn't have asked for more. It was right up my alley.
That's why I love starting in Virginia. I love starting my turkey season in Virginia because it gives you
Here's that philosophical stuff that he failed to tell you he was going to say, so you couldn't record it.
but it gives you that whole outlook on turkey hunting, right? Like you remember not to take turkey season for granted because like when I come back home, it's a whole different ballgame. I mean, that's a slaughter fest. I mean, that's literally what it is when I come home. And when I hunt other places, I mean, that's what it is. So you go to Virginia and you kind of just realize and you take it all in and just realize what turkey hunting really is and why you do it, right? Because I love it. I love it just as much as killing, as I love going to Virginia and failing. I really honestly enjoy it. And it's not even failing because like you're saying, the chase and the pursuit is what makes it. Like I say this all the time. I mean, it's what makes it. I mean, that them outsmarting you is the funnest part. You connecting with them is a good thing, and I love them outsmarting and connecting. But when you do it in Virginia, it's a whole different ball game. I will kill a bird in that state someday. It might not be next year. It might not be the year after.
It's gonna happen. We're gonna make it happen.
It'll happen.
That's all I'm gonna say. It will happen.
It will. I know it will.
Granted, that particular property we on, I swear they're like radioactive superbirds.
Mm-hmm.
Like they can sense electrical charge off the human body from a quarter mile away or something. Because you could be laying in a ghillie suit under a pile of leaves, and when they come in range, they'll look right at you and be like, I know you're there. Like you can't hide from these birds. I don't care how camouflaged you are. They always seem to pick you out. It's crazy.
It seems like you got to hunt them things like whitetails. You have to know where they come from, where they go, and ambush them. I mean, that's just
which is funny because that's actually the day you left. The next morning, we took everything we'd learned beforehand, and that where we were in the rain the third day when he saw the bird at 80 yards walk across. And remember, I told you it's cliffed out just above that.
Mm-hmm.
It's about a 20-foot cliff, and I said I think they're roosting on top of that on a bench and then flying down. Well, that actually played a big part in the rest of the week. So the following day, we go in, and basically where we were standing when that bird fired off in the rain, instead of going down the trail, we cut up into the woods. And I said, well, let's see if we can get above him. And we got in, and they were hammering, and I was like, all right, they're on the ground. They're moving. Birds coming towards us. I was like, we can't go any higher. We found a tree and had to sit. Picture perfect, had the hen sitting out in the 25 yards, beautiful opening in the hardwood. And we watched this bird come down across this ridge. I was like, all right, he's there. And he makes a 90-degree cut. I was like, oh, buddy, here we go. I'm telling him, I was like, get your shit ready, get your gun right on him. Don't move. And he's got to go behind this log, pop out of this log, and he's dead. Well, we watch him drop behind this log. We never see him again, but we hear. Burk, 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 burk. And I turn and look at him. I was like, how did we get busted? It's like he didn't even make it far enough to see the hens, let alone see us. But that bird picked us out and was gone. And he didn't make it no more than 65 yards from us. I mean, he wasn't even in like good range. And picked us out from behind a log. So those birds, I don't know, it's insane.
Wow, that's nuts, man. And I think, I mean, one of the things too that I kind of learned there too is like the predatorial that's there.
The pressure.
The pressure. Well, not even the pressure, but the predators. The predators that build the pressure, right?
Yeah.
Because like with seeing the hawk, with seeing the coyote, they don't really call. They're not all that responsive because I feel like they're so afraid of getting eaten by something and they know it.
Well, and that's the thing is, think about the entire time you were here, and even think about last year. How many times did you ever hear a hen yelp? They don't. They just bark, 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 and go silent. And those toms are on them. We'd yelp and they'd respond all day long, but it's like, "Ha, I know what you are. I'm out of here. Our hens don't yelp." Busted.
Right.
And that's kind of the mentality we took in. So after that bird busted us, he was moving back down that direction where he went the first time. So we said, well, let's beeline it down to the trail and see if we can get around him. We end up breaking brush and going clear down to the field edge. Well, just before we get into the field edge, we're about 10 yards from the edge. And I look over and those two toms are standing in the same spot in the middle of that field. I was like, well, we called to them and same thing. They ignore us. In fact, they gobbled at us and turned around and walked the other way. I was like, well, let's just set up right here. We know they roost here. Maybe they'll come back through. We made this nice little hidey hole, perfect natural blind. You know, the bushes for once they're made favor for us, made a nice, perfect little cutout. We sat down and no more than 10 minutes later, and Andrew goes, look at that strutter across the field, 500 yards. Beast of a bird. Remember that bird that we kept hearing down below that farm at the far corner, but we could never get to work? Yeah, he was sitting in that field just strutting. We watched that bird for an hour and a half.
Hour and a half.
And he was a tank because those two other toms that had left us saw him, and there was a hen that had popped out, and he was working that hen. Those two other toms bailed off, crossed the field, jumped the creek, and went up, gobbling and trying to chase him off. And he just nonchalantly was like, come with me, baby. Went off in the trees. Those two other toms sat there and strut in his spot for 30 minutes, and then they followed him in. So we said, because last year there was that bird strutting in there too.
Right.
I said, that's a strut zone. Tomorrow morning, we need to get in here extra early, make it all the way around that field. And we're going to sit right there, and we're going to try the all day sit in one spot and wait them out.
And it was supposed to rain.
Yeah, it was supposed to rain. So we had the
It
blind.
would have been perfect.
We had the blind. We had the chairs. We were going to do the whole easy way other than the pack in because it was 2 miles to that point from the car. So we rearranged our gear, had it set up so he would carry the blind and chairs. I had everything else. It was perfect. We get up the next morning, drive all the way down there, pull in.
Looking at stars.
Pristine, beautiful morning. We're both going through every weather app we have.
I think we went through 5 between the two of us.
I was like, dude, I don't see anything. Like there's no rain.
We're talking like 70% chance of rain from 6 a.m. to
10,
11
yeah.
to getting there in the morning and 0 rain anywhere. None.
So we're like, well, I guess we don't need the blind. So we grab the regular stuff. We pile into that field. We get in, we sit down 20 minutes before the first gobble. Like perfect timing. Still dark. Everything's set up. Cameras are ready to go. It's still dark. Sun comes up, birds fire off, same spot. It's like, all right.
There were birds everywhere that morning.
Birds,
like all 300,
circled.
Well, with the exception of the open end of the field, we had birds on 3 sides of us.
So I'm like, we're in something's coming in because they're broken up in my head. And we get set up, and he goes, I think there's a bird in that far field where we were set up the day before. And 2 hens pop out. And it's funny, I had just done a fly down cackle. And he goes, oh, look, hens. And sure enough, 2 hens walk out. And we're sitting there watching them. And he goes, oh, there's 2 more down below, right over the ridge. Then we see, like, there's 2 strutters again. They're just sitting down there in the bottom of that hill in the same spot. And we're like, well, that means this guy should be popping out soon because the sun just hit this field. South side slope, first place gets one. We're figuring that bird's coming in here to strut. We watched them birds strut in that field for 2 hours.
A long time, Trev.
It is a long time to watch birds, man. That would kill me. I'd try and figure out every way to get on them. Oh, that's
The
so
only
tough.
way-
I was itching. I told him like 6 times. I was like, I'm just gonna crawl out there behind those ridges.
I was
dump
looking
down
for
into that
cedar
creek.
boughs that I could cut and turn into a fan and try to tie them together and make a half-ass fan and try to just reap them. And
Man,
that bird, that big Tom, never came into the struts. I never heard him.
One time at
Oh,
like
yeah.
10 o'clock in the morning, he hit off once, way down at the bottom on the neighbors, and that was
wow.
It's like, what in the heck is going on, man? So we sit there and watch and watch and watch some more.
we sat there till 11:15
Until the shitter truck came
until
through.
the
The property literally shit on us.
the dude driving a manure truck, he drove around the field and
Kicked on
sprayed
the
us.
sprayer right as he drove by us.
We're back in the timber.
Did he know it was that you were in there?
He never saw us.
Like,
He
looked
was
right past us.
10 yards away from us. Never saw us sitting there and drove right
Flipped
up
on
along
that
the edge of the field.
I take the camera and I tuck it down below and I duck my hat and I still get whacked in the face.
Hats
And I was
down,
like,
chunks of cow. Luckily, it was dry, not the wet stuff. That would have been bad.
oh.
But yeah,
That's
he
the best
showered-
turkey story I've ever heard in my life.
Showered us in cow crap.
I turned and looked at Andrew and
It's
said,
like, we're done.
let's leave. We're done.
We need to make a Virginia manure T-shirt. I think is what we need to do.
turkey season shit on me.
Yes.
There you go.
I think. Oh wow, that's great. That's nuts, dude.
So
Well, and the day before, he tried to spray us with
we
the
were in the-
fertilizer or with the.
we went to that back
weed killer.
far field where last year we had those jakes hit the fence and couldn't cross.
Yep.
And we assumed that whole time that field was tilled under like everything else. We walked back there and that thing is like pristine 3-inch grass. And I was like, no wonder all those birds were coming this way. We need to set up here. So we set up in the back corner of that field that day for the last afternoon just to do some blind calling and see if something would come in. We'd been there for 10 minutes and the guy comes in a giant boom arm sprayer truck spraying fertilizer. Like liquid.
It sounded like a semi on a highway that just didn't stop. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh my gosh,
He's right here.
80 yards away. Grab those decoys.
He runs out.
Running out in the field and
I was like, what the
wrapping up
hell?
decoys, trying to get back. And it
So-
wasn't, I mean, he was 30 yards away by the time I got back. Like he was.
and he wasn't stopping. He'd
No.
ran it. He was in one of the trucks that are, the tires are 8 foot tall and goes over the crops.
Yeah, the alley trucks.
Yeah. Yes. And he wouldn't have stopped. He just kept coming.
Ugh.
That was the end of that. And then we ran into the shitter truck the next day.
Yeah.
And we came home. We're like, all right. Started rethinking.
What
So-
have we not done yet?
Last night I said the only thing we have not done is reap the roost tree. And I said, I've got a pretty good idea where it is. We pulled it up, Google Maps.
That was this
done-
morning.
Yeah, that was this morning.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I was like, I'm pretty sure they're sitting right here above this cliff face. And I think if we go in where we went in and got busted by that first bird when we went up,
Mm-hmm.
but we go in earlier, I think we can get right in there right in their bedroom.
I think that would be like the best idea, right? That's like probably the
That's-
best idea.
I usually reserve
Knowing-
that for like Hail Marys because it's risky. You get in there and do it and you screw it up, you're done in that area.
Well, it is like the last day of the season for you guys, technically.
Yeah,
Being
for camp, yeah.
right.
So I said we got to go reap the roost, and bare minimums. I mean, I left my gun here. I had my call bag, no backpacks, no water, no nothing, and the camera. He had a backpack with a bottle of water and the shotgun. No seats, no decoys, no nothing. And we went in, started moving up, and I was like, all right, we should be getting close. We should be getting close. We get to a point we stopped to kind of take a breather and assess. And I said, we need to get to either that tree or that tree. I said, let's move up to this one and then over to that one.
Have they hammered at this point?
No, it's still silent.
So you don't know where they are technically. You just know
we
the area.
know we're close, but we don't
Right.
know where.
Okay.
So we work our way up to the first tree, and I turn around and I'm kind of looking and observing, going, it's good, but it doesn't have the cover I want. I said, well, that tree right over 30 yards away. Like, we are sitting
underneath him,
the limbs of the tree.
You guys are pulling a Zach.
Yeah.
A hunting public Zach with his Georgia bird at this point.
So
wow.
I was like, dude, sit down, make minimal movement, minimal sound. Luckily, the tree was already cleared out. So we were able to just slide right in and sit on it. And it was a beautiful oak with like four legs.
Yeah.
So it came up and made like 2 bench seats. And he sat on one and I sat on the other. Me being an idiot, I sat on the left side just because that's where we were and it was convenient. And we sit here and I get the camera set up and I'm watching, trying to figure out which exact tree he's in. And just, and it's just one bird. I was like, well, did they break up again? So,
well, we had no idea. Like, we've got one bird right above us, right? And what was to come, we had no idea at this point. It was just sit down, shut up, and
because I kept telling him, I was
hold
like,
on.
If he's right there, we know every day there's been 4 or 5 birds roosted right here.
This is a big cojones jump here. Like, this is it.
And I was like, if we do this right, this thing's going to land in our laps and you're going to shoot him like at the end of your barrel. So we're sitting there and we just let him do his thing. You know, we're scratching some leaves, just making enough noise to make it interesting. You know, it was just before they fly down. I got the mouth reed in. I just do, ultra light tree yelp, just yelp, 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 about that loud. It's like, okay, he knows we're here. So I just sit and wait. And we watch him pitch off the tree off to the left. And I'm going, crap, because the way this tree's facing, we're facing here. He ended up flying, so he was off to my left. So Andrew would have had to shoot across me.
And there was just a bit of a dip in this hill. Like, where he came down, it was like where the hill rolled over. And the only tree we could get to when he fired that first time of the 2 we were looking at was one of them was on top of that lip.
The other one should have been.
You know, and we're talking maybe 8 inches of elevation difference between the 2 trees, which would end up making all the difference in the world. But right before he came down,
yes,
all of a sudden there were 3 other birds
light on
that lit
fire.
up. And then they lit up, and next thing you know, we got hens lighting up, and we're in a 3D movie. We've got birds in front of us, behind us, below us, above us.
Like, we weren't
everywhere.
In the bedroom, we were in the bed. And I'm looking at Andrew like, dude, don't move. Something may walk up behind us and we can't see or hear. I was like, we just got to literally see what happens. And that tom pitches down. And the other tom pitches down.
The third tom pitches down.
Third one pitches down. Hens pitch down all around us. And I'm like, okay, but that thing is fired and you can hear him coming right at us. I said, this is going to be quick. He's coming right at us. I said, get ready.
And there was a deer trail heading off the lip of that hill at a 45-degree angle to my left.
So it would have been a safe shot.
I mean, completely no trees, nothing. You could tell the deer used it often. I was like, he's going to come right over that opening. Like,
at that point, are you calling at him or anything, Steven, or are you just letting him ride?
You were scratching the ground. You didn't call again until after they popped over.
So I was literally just scratching leaves with my low hand, and he's just coming and coming to the point that I was so convinced he's fixing to die. I actually slid my finger up and put it in my ear because the gun barrel was like right here. So I'm like, this is going to hurt. I was like,
yeah.
And I was so stoked.
I set my phone up to record in the trees. I have 20 minutes of these birds cackling nonstop. From the time right before he flew down to the time the whole thing was over, it's 20 minutes, and it's nonstop noise. Yeah, it was wild.
Wow.
So this bird is coming. It's working towards us, but he continues to move to my left. So as we're hoping he's here, and he's doing this.
He's moving
to the point
towards
where if
90 up the hill.
If he turned to get a shot on the bird where he was at, he would have shot my camera. So
Can you see him like at this?
No,
Can you
no,
see? Okay,
not yet.
he
Right
hasn't
over-
broken. Okay,
right over that roll. So we have no real idea where this bird is. I can't see him. He can't see me. I can't see any hens. Don't hear anything behind me. So I actually grab the camera and lean off to the back of the tree, and I lay down and set the camera up where my head is and just take a guess as to where it's pointing. And I'm laying on the ground. And it wasn't 3 seconds after I lay down, I look under the underbrush and I just see this white head walking right to it. And I was like, Andrew, take the shot. Take the shot. Shoot, shoot, shoot. Because I didn't realize when I moved, I changed my perspective out of his line of sight. So I'm like, dude, dead to right. It's 20 yards, dead to right. Shoot, shoot, shoot. Take the shot. Take the shot.
This particular spot had a bunch of these like 14 to 16
Magnolias.
Magnolias with these big leaves.
Or sorry, not magnolias, rhododendrons.
So you could see under them, and you could see, 4 inches of heads above them. But the problem that played itself out is we had multiple birds making noise that we could see, right? But we've got hens and jakes and toms all mixed together. So
that's so awesome.
We're at initially, there's no way of identifying a target.
I
Right.
just saw a white head.
And
That means shoot.
we had
Red is dead.
had one blow up and start strutting. And all I could see was his tail fan on one side of a tree. And so I'm looking down the scope, and I got, both eyes open, and I'm just slightly moving my head in and out of the scope because waiting for this hole in the tree for him to stick his head out. And I'd moved out, and he stuck his head in, and I put my eye back immediately and watched his head pass through the scope behind another tree. And then he turned around, and nothing but fan from that bird for the next 15 minutes.
Fanned down the hens all circled behind us, got in front of them, drug them up over the mountain, and they walked up the hill. And I'm in a girl fight with one of the hens at this point. She's chop hit me, and I'm boop, 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 right back. I mean, just going.
Oh, you're just giving it to her, right?
I was like, if I can piss her off enough to come over here, she may bring the other 3 that never came up with her.
She's gonna take the ride, right?
And could not get her to break. And I look over, and at this point, they're walking off. So I was like, well, I'm going to pop back up. I pop up. And as I pop up, there was a hen sitting there. And I was like, you can hear me in the video. I'm like, damn it. The birds were already moving away. She turns, so I just hammer right back at her. And she ends up standing there for another 2 or 3 minutes, just
Well, and additionally, we had that Jake at like 60, a little higher up the hill off to my left, that was convinced that we were a hen. And you'd see him circle around and drop off the hill, and he'd fight with that hen, and that Jake would kind of pop his head back over, and he'd be looking, and then the other birds would start to move off, and he'd follow him back down. And then he'd bark again, and that Jake would turn back up, come back around. I'm like, yeah. Eventually he was convinced that we were there. He just never. He finally ended up following his friends, but it was a wild 25 minutes.
That's when we determined that we hadn't seen but 2 or 3 hens, heard a couple of hens, and on top of that hill, we realized there were like 20 or 30 hens that roost with them. And I was like, well, no wonder they're ignoring us. They got all they need up on the mountain.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So, well, you learned your trick, man. You learned what you got to do now. Now you know where they go naturally.
Well, we heard one tom actually break off, and I think it's the same tom that cheated us 2 days earlier on the hillside, and he went right down that same path where we ran into him. Mm-hmm. I told Andrew, I said, grab your crap. We're going to hightail it down the hill, get back on the trail, get around past some rails, and get to the edge of the pines. Because I'm pretty sure.
Do you think that they're going that direction?
I think that one bird, the rest go over the mountain and go down off the property of the place that we don't have.
Okay.
This bird circles the top of that mountain and goes down to the pines.
Wow.
So I told Andy, I was like, we got to get down there and get ahead of him. So, I mean, we bail off this mountain. We made it from right there where those birds are on that cliff face back to the pines in like 4 minutes. And we were moving. And we get set back up and give it a few minutes to calm down. I was like, okay, now I'm going to call. We sat there until 8 o'clock and never heard another bird. So I pulled up the phone. I said, well, I have one Hail Mary. I said, we can drive an hour and 45 minutes up to this chunk of public, get on top of it, walk down, get on the Appalachian Trail, and just run the Appalachian Trail through the middle of this WMA and see if we can strike a bird in the last hour and a half. So we do. We get up there and we start working. At first place is so thick, literally you can't leave the trail. So we get in the car and go to another spot that's a little more open. We start working down the trail again. Calling. On every little ridge we drop over, I'm like, this is the one. It's going to be right over this ridge. It's the next ridge. We cross this ridge and I start calling and we turn around and here comes some lady down the trail. I wondered what that sound was. And I looked at Andrew, I was like, we're done.
Yep. Pack it up.
So let's find a spot. Let's go hump off the trail a little ways, find a ridge or something. And
Take a nap.
He goes, there's a nice little bench down there. It looks like it'll work just fine. So we went down there, tucked in, did blind called every 15 minutes on just to see.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew spent the last 30 minutes of his season in Virginia taking a nap against a tree.
It was
Attaboy.
a perfect way to end. The sun was shining.
No, it got cooking.
It was great.
It went.
I saw the Instagram post.
It was great.
It was 31 degrees when we
I
got
love
out of the car this morning. It was 67 degrees when we got back in.
Yeah.
It got
And-
crazy.
Yeah.
And we had a bird gobble as we were walking out at like 12:10.
Yeah.
Yo.
Just to add insult to injury.
Of course. Just got to at least kick it off right.
It was great. It was an awesome way to end the week.
He literally got
That's awesome.
the best week of turkey hunting you could ever ask for without a
100.
Saw
There's nothing
every
wrong with that.
scenario,
No.
every situation, got put in all sorts of weird places, and got to see pretty much everything you'd see in 2 or 3 seasons in a week.
Dang.
It
Good for
was-
him.
Yeah.
If I could have a week where I don't kill, it would have been this week.
I agree with you 100%, man. 100% do I agree.
After this week, like, say we just shot a bird yesterday morning, like that would have been the least exciting thing to happen all week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I totally agree with you.
it would, I mean, maybe not least exciting, but it would have been the least. It would not have made or broken the trip. It would have.
Mm-hmm.
It would not have been the most interesting part of the trip. Let me put it that way.
So can you say now that you've been through all this, you've been through hell and high water, do you feel like they are the Eastern elk?
But we had this discussion a little bit as we were sitting there in the pines today.
So here's what I think. Yes and no.
Okay.
The thing that I thought that was most interesting to that parallel is the amount of sound that comes out of those animals. It kind of shocked me at how well that sound fits where that animal belongs. Because you've got this wild, crazy sound that comes out of an elk, right? That reverberates across mountain ranges, big mountain ranges. I mean, you can hear an elk from
Miles.
2, 3, 4 miles away on a clear day. I mean, and and when you're right on top of it, this is something we talked about that's interesting about both. One, an elk has a piercing sound that a gobbler doesn't have,
Mm-hmm.
which was interesting. But when you're on top of an elk and he gobbles in your face at like 25 yards,
No elk gobbled.
did I say? I said gobble. Sorry. when an elk bugles in your face at 20 yards, you vibrate physically like you're at a rock concert standing in front of the base. It's like that. When you're 20 yards from a gobbler that's on the ground, he's oddly enough not as loud as he was when he was 80 yards away. It's
so true.
fascinating.
Isn't that a trip?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting how those two different sounds fit within their environment. So I thought that was fascinating. In Virginia, I will say that it was fairly similar to elk hunting. There's something to the analogy. I won't give it to you 100% until I go do it somewhere easily or somewhere different. But here in this place, the comparison is certainly interesting. I felt like I was doing elk type things a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was, and we discussed it after we got home and kind of started tallying. You know, you go elk hunting and you're doing 12 to 15 miles in a day on a bigger scale, bigger land.
Bigger scale.
Here we're on smaller scale, smaller land, and we're doing 4 or 5 miles a day.
Yeah.
So you're technically doing the same thing.
The ratio is probably similar.
It's legitimately like a micro version when it comes to the time spent on foot and the moving and the tactics. Excuse me.
And the thing that was interesting about that property that came through today is I don't know if you know much about some of the big name elk callers, but there's a couple of guys, Jason Phelps is the one, and Corey Jacobson, that are known for getting inside of an elk's comfort zone and blasting a bugle at him to strike him up, right? And it's a little bit kind of what we did this morning.
That is the only thing we didn't try is throw an actual gobble at these birds.
True. But getting inside that comfort range this morning was similar to that Corey Jacobson style.
Yeah.
You know,
so
that's how I play the field, man. That's how I play the field big time. Like that's especially at home.
There's a time to be aggressive, man. And today was it. We learned enough finally after 2 years about these birds, and we pinned them down enough that I was comfortable making that aggressive move.
And you need to know that. Like, that's one of the things about, like, even going into the whitetail world in that realm of it. Like, there's a time and a place to be in the bed of a whitetail. I mean, it's a time and a place.
Barrel into where you think they are if you don't know.
No. You need to learn, you need to study those deer. You need to, and same with the turkeys. You need to know where they are, where they roost, where they sleep, how they naturally move. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's times that, like, I'll go in before the season, like scouting here, and I'll go in and just sit naturally for 2-3 hours and just see where them birds actually naturally move to be able to go in and attack on those birds.
Yep.
I've had that
certain level of understanding of what you're after in order to make those kind of decisions. Because I would be willing to bet that there are places where that tactic's not going to work, you know, to run inside their comfort zone and hammer at them.
Absolutely.
So, but you have to understand the animal itself and the animals in that region, what they do. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all if you don't kill a bird next week.
Right.
Based on what we've gone after. And if that property doesn't change from a success standpoint over the next few years based on what happened this week. And that's, like you said, every animal. I mean, there are some deer farms where getting inside of the bed is going to be the worst possible thing you can do. And there are going to be some places where that's the only way you're going to kill that deer. So
it's just learning it.
It's learning the animal and that animal within the context of where you're at on that particular day.
Right.
And that's so for me, like today, man, like we went in, we scouted where those birds were going to be. I went in there in the morning. I hit a call. The thing was stupid aggressive. It came right after us so this is the day before. This was Thursday. And that bird come running in and I was like, oh no, it was, Thursday. And so we ended up backing out real quick and then going back in this morning with the youth hunter. And that bird literally come out that tree at daybreak. Like it was, he got so close so quick, and the way that he come out the tree that I honestly believed that we were going to have to wait when he was in the decoys to be able to shoot for legal shooting light. That's how quick he come down aggressively like that.
Wow.
It was nuts. And he just read the textbook, and that bird come in and he got in his strut zone. He knew that area so well. He got in that strut zone and he sat in that strut zone for an hour and a half. I pulled every trick out of the book. I mean, everything that you could do to try and get that bird to break 25 yards to come into the decoys. And remind you, I have a youth, so it's a little bit tougher. Like if it was us, I'd wait for him to go. We'd circle bound him and we'd kill him. I mean, we know where he's going to go and where he's going to come. I mean, it would have been a lot easier. But having a youth, it's tough. You have to. They don't. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just a lot more for them to. You have to set them up properly with the right. You know what I'm. Definitely gets tough. So I tried calling this bird, and you just watch him fan up, strut, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I'm like, all right, buddy, come on, aggressive, soft, purr, this, that. I mean, I gave him everything I could. I wait for him to go out. I crawl back. I go back 80 yards. I hammer on him. He's pouring it on. Same area. Back and forth, back and forth. Then he comes up, he semicircles, comes around to my left. Now I'm thinking he's going to come in to my left. And I'm like, oh, what am I going to do now? So now I crawl down so that now I'm keeping this bird to my left, but I'm keeping the shooter in the middle. Now I'm 60 yards from them, but I'm downhill of them. I'm like, all right, here he comes. Nope. Stays semicircle. Completely out. Hated the decoy. Locked up as soon as he saw the decoy. So I'm like, all right. Now, mind you, now we're almost 2 hours into this. I let him go down. I let him go right off. So I crawl up to the guys and I say, listen, this is what we're going to do. Screw the decoys. So we're going to take a hen decoy. We're going to go down 40 yards into that strut zone where he was. We're going to set up. I'm going to set up a decoy. I'm going to start calling. I start calling. He starts pouring it on. Here he comes. I'm like, all right, get ready. He's going to come. Hangs up a little bit. I hit the call again. One fires off behind us. I said, here we go. I said, who cares about that bird? We know we can kill this bird, or at least make a better attempt, because we haven't messed with this bird for 2 hours. So I have the decoy now is behind me. I've now moved behind the shooter. He's sitting in front of me, and now I have him wrapped around the tree, and here he comes. Here comes this Tom, and he's, I hit the call. He gobbles. I can now see him. He's strutting, and he's about 60 yards away, 70 yards away. He's strutting, and he's coming in. And so I have Everett, who's the shooter, and he's in front of me, and I can see the bird start to come, and now he struts, comes out of struts. So I hit him with the call, and he looks down in my direction, and he doesn't see anything. And now I'm in the open, so like, yep. He's like, oh, whoa, what's going on here? He's not seeing nothing, and he's like, all weird. So he sticks up his head, and he starts to walk out, and I go, shoot him, Everett, shoot him, Everett, shoot him. And you could see him, he goes to go shoot, and he like does it like the, the flinch, like the, like he's waiting for the shot to come off. Well, I don't know if he couldn't get the safety or what the case may be. He ends up getting it off, and the bird starts walking away, and he hammers this bird. Boom! He falls on the ground, and he's out cold. I end up pacing it off, and it was kind of like a Hail Mary, because it was like now or never. You take the shot or don't take the shot. We're going to you got to at least attempt it. He ends up lacing this thing, and it was cool. It was awesome, man. It was really cool to see. And he had hunted last year when he was 12 and just couldn't get it done. He tried it on his own with his dad and stuff, and a friend of mine. And it was cool to have him come out and be able to actually do it and actually connect. And it was fun, but working that bird, man, we didn't shoot that bird until almost 8:00. We had been in the woods since 5:30, and it just working the birds. And I didn't even know that there was never a bird behind us. I don't know if it was all the commotion of the goblin or whatever the case may be, but we ended up pulling a second bird in. Thank God we did, because if we didn't, it would have been tough. It would definitely have been tough to kill that bird. And that bird still was gobbling down in the valley, but we were just so wrapped up in what was actually going on that it.
Well, and that's the thing is, like I told Andrew when he got here, I said, you will never experience the same hunt on a second day. every day in the turkey woods will be 100% different and unique.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we proved that fact. And you being here and then going home to get to experience birds that actually work, which, by the way, what's it like having birds that actually work?
I go through this every single time that I go into Virginia, right? So then I come home and then I come back to birds and I'm like, wow, that was easy. Like these birds, they read the script. Like, I mean, they read it to a T. Like anything that you throw at them, they take it, like you do get them to hang up, obviously. And I think I really would like to know at what point does what decoy work over another? Like where does the Jake decoy attract them in? Because I've had hunts where birds more mature, like the toms, they don't really care for the decoys. The younger birds, the 2.5-year-olds, the 1.5-year-olds,
I didn't want to fight.
they hammer it down. But the big birds, the pressured birds, they hate those decoys. And it's in Virginia, it's in Connecticut, it's in Maine, it's at wherever I've hunted. It's the same thing over and over. And I'm almost to the point where I'm just going to throw that thing away. And
it's like today, Andrew brought up the point. He's like, I wonder if we had a hen decoy when they looked over that ridge and saw it, if they would have committed.
It's a very good possibility. My thing is when I hunt by myself or with an experienced hunter, we don't even use decoys. We just hunt the hardwoods and we have them search and find us.
Yep.
When you have a youth or you're archery hunting, you have to have that magnet for them
to get their attention off you.
Right. But it doesn't always work.
Nope. Well, saying that's the crazy thing. Like even where we were hunting, the decoys didn't work for us. Actually, they worked against us the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas 4 days before, we had 5 toms come in and attack the same decoys in the same spot when Kim killed hers.
Right.
I mean,
do they get to like that turning point where it's like?
Yeah,
well,
I guess.
And one thing we talked about is when Kim's came in, she had what, 5?
Yeah, there were 5 toms, 5 long bears.
And that's one thing that we kicked back and forth when those 2 from day 4 went across the field and across the creek chasing after that big monster.
Right.
It seemed like on that property, if there were 2 of them, they didn't mind the Jake. But if one bird came in, they weren't going to mess with it. And the other
think it's like a competition thing?
It's got to be a pecking order.
Mm-hmm.
And we also felt like Jakes in the timber were a bad idea. We felt like we might be able to get away with the hen, but we definitely weren't going to get away with the hen and the Jake if we were in the timber.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's crazy.
It's a crapshoot. Because, I mean, you think about Saturday morning, your first morning out there, those 2 toms came in, saw the decoy and turned around and walked away. And then turned around and saw a live tom in full strut and wanted to go fight.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
So, I mean, I'm almost considering that maybe next year I take a full strutter.
That might be another thing that would help, especially because you're instilling competition at that. You're instilling the competition at that point.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe we'll add that into the mix and see what happens.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, I could go back to Oklahoma with the same 2 decoys, and they may destroy the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Or I may have the same issues.
Well,
so I think we kept going back to it and back to it and back to it on that particular property. Those are highly intelligent birds.
Mm-hmm.
And
they're not that big for a reason.
That's one thing that's going to be interesting going back, because I've got some places at home that I can guarantee you haven't been turkey hunted maybe in years. So if there are birds in there,
they're uneducated.
They're going to be uneducated, but it's almost like starting at zero, because are they going to like the decoys? Are they not going to like the decoys?
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to want a hen or a couple hens, or a hen and a Jake, or a hen and a strutter? I mean, it'll be an interesting learning process.
Welcome
just there
to
at
the
home.
deep, dark hole of turkey hunting, my friend.
You just took the words right out of my mouth, buddy. I said, here's the needle.
Yep.
You've got the sickness, my friend. Just even thinking about that.
And that, to me, that's one of the funnest parts about turkey hunting.
For sure.
Because because you can configure your weapon a million different ways. You can
Mhm.
configure your setup a million different ways. You can use a million different tactics, and only one's going to work on that set of birds. You got to figure out what it is.
So true.
And it's fun because decoys are fun. I mean, we talked about while you're here. Like, I like decoys. I've got a bunch of old duck decoys at the house.
Mhm.
I enjoy that kind of stuff, but I don't use a decoys deer hunting ever.
Nope.
Right. Same.
Too much work. It's too much hassle. I've never had any luck with it. Like, there are other ways to get it done without a decoy. I'm not. I have zero interest in messing with it. It's just not something I'm interested in. But it's interesting with turkeys.
Truly. Well, Andrew,
Speaking
I
of
do.
Trulies, you left a pile of them here.
Yeah, that's all right. You can have them.
I don't drink.
Andrew can take it back.
I don't drink Boone's Farm, man.
Yeah, that's all. That's good stuff too. Hey. Well, Andrew, I know you were upset about the last one, but can I ask you one question?
Please.
What drives you outdoors, brother?
Okay, so
Have you been like
Shoot.
practicing? Has he been like reciting? Is there like a? Is there a
listen,
paper?
listen,
Scripted it, read it in the
listen
mirror.
I figured.
You guys
Some
are
red lipstick.
This is episode 82, right? You guys are a year and 2 months into this podcast.
Bro, where did you get that number? Because I didn't even know that number.
Because
Technically, it's 83.
Okay.
81 was the last one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we have part 1 is
Yeah, part 1 was 81.
this guy. He's on the ball.
Well, all right.
Listen, I've been thinking about this question for a year because this is my favorite question. But before I answer it, I have to unfortunately compliment you guys a little bit because I think this question is the genius of this show, what makes it so interesting. Because you wait until the end of the interview to ask this question, but you've just spent an hour with this person answering this question through the back door. And it's fascinating to me because you can have somebody come on here and have a fantastic conversation and struggle to answer this question. It's because they just spent an hour answering the question without answering the question. So the fact that you did that, whether it was on purpose or an accident, it doesn't matter. It's great. And the other thing I love is that you're not asking people why they like to hunt or why they like to fish. You're asking them what drives them outdoors. Why are you going outdoors? And that is a much more broad question and is much more, in my opinion, deep question. In fact, the psychologist Jordan Peterson was once asked if he believed in God, and his response was, "It would take me 40 hours to start answering that question." And after thinking about this question for a year, I think that's my ultimate answer to this question is we would need about 40 podcasts to come up with a decent answer to this question, for me at least. But the shortest answer I can come up with as far as what drives me outdoors is potential. Because when you step outside, you don't know what's going to happen. And I think that's what keeps me coming back every time. And whether you're going out for a shed hunt or your first turkey hunt, or you're going into the farm that you've been into 100 times and you know the cows are going to ruin your hunt, or you go out west and walk through the desert or climb into the alpine and get above tree level. Even if you're walking down the Appalachian Trail or, get on a boat in your local lake that's really more of a pond, it doesn't matter what's going to happen or what you're doing. You don't know what's going to happen. And I think that's fascinating. And like I said, I could go on and on about this, about why that is for days. But I think somewhere close to the core for me is just the fact that something interesting is going to happen when I step outside my front door. I don't know what it is, and it's never going to be the same thing twice. And that's what gets my motor running for that kind of thing. So
I
that's
love
the
it, man.
best I can do in 3 minutes.
I appreciate it. I really like it.
And y'all stay tuned for Andrew's outdoor philosophy segment.
Yeah, exactly. Coming next, man.
Coming soon.
I will say, man, before we wrap this up, man, it was a pleasure spending time with you guys both. I had an absolute incredible time, man. I had 7 hours to think about the ride home and how, you know, all the things I've been blessed to do throughout my life, honestly, with especially being in the outdoors, that, you know, camp that we had was an incredible time. I had one of the best times turkey hunting, man. I've had the pleasure of hunting with a lot of people in the turkey woods, and I had an incredible time this week. And I honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank both of you for that, because it was so much fun. I had an absolute blast. I really did. And even thinking about it, I got a tear coming down. So
Well, it's always an honor to have you guys down here, and it's always a great time. Regardless of what happens, we always seem to have a fun time doing it and come out with some of the craziest stories you can't make up.
you cannot.
So,
Well, what was it for weeks? You kept saying like, "This might be hard. This might be rough. We may have to work for it."
we're gonna have to work for it.
Kept telling you back. Good.
Good.
We're gonna have fun.
Good.
We're gonna have fun. Good. We're gonna have fun.
Andrew jinxed it from the beginning, and I knew that this was going to happen.
Hey, it's all right.
But it was worth it.
I mean,
It was.
So much better than if we'd have killed that first bird on
It was-
Saturday morning.
It was truly amazing. And honestly, I really have to thank Peter Dalton. Honestly, 100%. I mean, he made the
hats
trip.
off.
Awesome.
We couldn't thank him enough. I know in the first podcast we kind of like busted on him and this, that, and the other thing. But honestly, if it wasn't for him, we would have been down a day of hunting, and actually probably 2 days worth of hunting. And he definitely pulled it together for us. And you know, he took guys in arms open, and you know, we can't thank him enough. Yeah. And you know, it's the power of the podcast. And you know, I believe in that 100. I wouldn't know Steven if it wasn't for a podcast, and I wouldn't know Andrew, and I wouldn't know Peter, and I wouldn't know 1,000,001 other people that have kind of brought to this whole family, and you know, to see what the adventures are going to take, man, for sure.
Definitely.
Yep.
Well, guys, again, thank you. I appreciate you guys coming out and spending time out here in
Thanks for having us, man. And
Hell's
thanks to
Mountain
Kim,
in
too.
Virginia.
Thanks to Kim for the good food too. I keep forgetting about that.
Kim's
Oh yeah,
the best.
she takes care of us. That's for damn sure. And she had as much fun with you guys here as well. She loves having company, as you guys know, and it's just nice to have folks around and have a good time.
For sure.
So invites always open. However, next year I think we need to take and make our shift and look at doing turkey camp in Oklahoma.
Yeah, come on in. We'll go do the Rio thing and the Merriam's thing, and
I'm down for it. I think we should put
Get
that one
after
on
it.
the books, and then that
Mhm.
way, if all goes well, we have the Rio and the Merriam down before we even start chasing Eastern.
That's right.
yeah.
So
So we
I'm in
open
for the
ear-
slam.
we open early in Oklahoma. We've been open for 2 weeks before you guys open here.
So we could definitely put that to work. But we will catch up again soon. Andrew's on a flight back to Oklahoma tomorrow, and Trev's season opener kicks off soon, as well as your main trip. So we're going to have a lot to talk about here coming up.
Some
Not
good
to
stuff,
mention,
man.
You know, I still got to break my own personal turkey curse here in Virginia. So
You'll do it. I know you will.
It's coming.
we're going to grind it out this year, and I'm hoping there's going to be a lot more crazy stories to come along with that. So for everybody out there listening, we hope you guys enjoyed. Reach out if you have questions, comments, let us know. Get on YouTube, follow if you want to see the video, like, follow, share, subscribe on all the social platforms as appropriate. And until then, thanks for taking the ride right here on the Outdoor Drive.